So anyway, what I wanted to talk about today was how we can use AI with differentiated instruction. This is one of those things that, especially when ChatGPT started to come out, we started to see what large language models were capable of and everything. I think for a lot of us, we were like, this is what I think it can do. This is some way that it can actually really seriously help. But then even up until today, it's like, we hear people talk about it in generalities, but we're like, how do you actually do it? How do you actually? So I wanted to show you some examples, some things out of my own classroom, some things that I know other folks have tried too that hopefully will be helpful to you. If you would like my slides, they're right there. ditch.link/none. I would type that in all lowercase. Okay, we're talking about differentiated instruction, right? So since differentiated instruction has somewhat to do with, making learning personalized, sort of, I thought I'd give you a little bit of personalization from me. Because you see, I'm not from Texas. Can I see a show of hands, how many of you are not from Texas? Oh, look at that. Look at that. Okay, how many of you thought you were coming to San Antonio because it was going to be warmer than where you're from? I can't tell you how disappointed I am that I have to lug this thing around all over it's like disrespectful how cold it is down here. Folks, I'm from Indiana. It was 17 degrees when I left home. It was 17 degrees. But I'll tell you a little bit about the exact location that I'm from. I'm from Park County, Indiana, P-A-R-K-E, somebody's last name. And Park County, Indiana has the distinction of being called the covered bridge capital of the world. So teeny tiny little Park County, Indiana, where I think our grand total population is like 10,000 or less or something like that. We have somewhere in the neighborhood of 34 of these covered bridges. Some of them are still in use where you can drive across them. Some of them are out of commission. And we actually have a festival called the Covered Bridge Festival. It lasts for 10 days and it brings 2 million people to our county every year. 2 million, yep. And so obviously the covered bridges are a big part of our lives. The picture of me up at the top is me going on a run. I'm a runner. So I'm going on a run through this covered bridge because there's one within a mile of my house. My daughter on the right had her senior pictures taken in front of a covered bridge because that's what we do. And then the one down at the bottom is the West Union Bridge, which is the longest covered bridge that we have. And that's on my drive home from school every day. So this is a little piece of where I'm from. And so like I was saying, more than 2 million visitors annually. Oh, our county population is 16,000. Sorry, my stats were a little bit off. And it's 31 covered bridges instead of 34. Anyway, this is the Covered Bridge Festival I was telling you about. And wouldn't you say that everyone has their thing like this? Everybody's got something that's a little bit unique, that's a little bit different about them. And it works that way with our students, it works that way with our schools, with our locations of where it all is, right? And so now we're in a position where, teachers for a long time have been taking what's unique and special and personal to us and trying to translate learning through that lens for kids. We've been doing this for a while, right? Teachers have been doing this for a good long while. And of course, it's easier than ever to do that now, because we can put our own creative human faculties to work to try to make those little personalizations. But of course, now we have AI tools that will give us even more ideas and help us to brainstorm, right? And so if we wanted to connect these covered bridges to learning, here are some examples that I got from asking AI. Comparing our bridges to others around the world, comparing festival visitors to the population for K-5 math, designing a covered bridge, researching the purpose behind them, which, by the way, everybody seems to have a different story about why we have covered bridges. Some people say that the roof would protect the bridge from, breaking down and eroding over time. Others say that it was like cover from the weather if you're on your horse-driven carriage and you've got a place to stop. I don't know if anybody really knows. So you ask, and you've probably done a variation of this, I bet, right? Can I get ideas about something specific, about something that my students are into? And of course, this is the world that we live in these days. which is exciting that we have all of this stuff at our fingertips. There are also, if you're like me, thinking about AI and working with AI is a roller coaster of emotions. I get excited about some things, but then also on me, I'm like, this is my creative outlet. This is how I reach my students. This is my special skill set. I still want to preserve that, you know? I still want to honor that. I want that to be worth something, you know? And so you try to find that balance. And of course, if we're going to use it in this way to help differentiate instruction for our students, to help, you know, meet them right where they are, there's lots of ways to be able to do it because, you know, let's be honest, up till this point, differentiating instruction for lots of us has been hard. And for some of us, it's like we get the idea of it in theory, but we're not totally exactly sure how to do it or how to do it well. Or it feels like you're asking me to make 24 lesson plans for 24 kids and I just don't have time to do that, you know? And so it's been this sort of like struggle. And so we slip back into that one-size-fits-all teaching. If you've ever worn one-size-fits-all clothes, it's not one-size-fits-all, is it? It's really kind of like my presentation title, it's one-size-fits-none, if we're being honest. So what do we have now? We have the opportunity to get some help. And so now we can tailor learning to our students' location, to their culture, to their interests, and of course, to the ways that they prefer to learn, and to the ways that they learn best, to be able to meet them right on their level and everything. So a lot of that stuff that we've struggled to do in the past, we have some help with. Just to make sure that we're all on the same page, we're talking about differentiated instruction, which is adjusting instruction to meet learner differences. A lot of this about differentiated instruction is based off of the work of Dr. Carol Ann Tomlinson from the University of Virginia. She's kind of like the leading voice for years and years and years on differentiated instruction, on breaking out of that one-size-fits-none mindset, right? And differentiated instruction, you may hear the term personalized learning thrown around, and we'll kind of touch on that a little bit too. But there is kind of a difference. By the way, I promise this won't be like a great big pedagogical, learning theory lecture the whole time. But I wanted to lay the framework, the foundation for you just a little bit before we dive into it. But differentiated instruction really is a little more about what do I do as a teacher for the whole class to vary the instruction for the needs of my students. Personalized learning puts it more in the hands of the students. The students have a little more say, they have a little more control. And of course, what's exciting about that is that now we also have some new tools on the market and some new ways to put that learning into students' hands. Not so that they can just go willy-nilly and do whatever they want with it, but within the scope of what they're trying to learn, right? Dr. Carol Ann Tomlinson, this is what you get whenever you're trying to type things onto Canvas slides on your phone after you woke up. It looked so good when I didn't have my glasses on. But differentiated instruction is about these two things. I wanted to highlight these: preparing for and responding to students' unique needs. Because you've probably done this before too, where you prepare for it ahead of time, how you think that it's going to go. But differentiated instruction also has to do with seeing those students' eyes in the moment and going, wait a second, something isn't quite working here. I need to make an adjustment on the fly. I think sometimes when we plan for things and then we have to make adjustments, we think, oh no, I failed. I didn't do that right. I didn't plan very well. But the reality is this is a part of differentiated instruction, is adapting to and responding to things in the moment. And some of the best teachers that I know are really good at just like seeing it and going, you know what? I can tell this isn't working. Let's try something else, right? And then, according to this survey by the Fordham Institute, 83% of teachers say that differentiation is either somewhat difficult or very difficult. And so let's talk about some ways that we can get around to that. This is one other little piece. I think this is my last introduction one before we get into the how do we do it. Another piece of this, I think, also is connecting to students' interests. Making it connect to the things that students love. And it's interesting the impact that has on the brain whenever we're able to connect it. And so Zoraida Hammond writes this really nicely in her book where, she talks about culture, culture being, where your students are coming from and what their traditions are, but also what they're into. Gosh, teachers have been adapting learning to what students are interested in into for a good long time. And you're probably, you've probably done some of that too. Like, you overhear these kids talking about, TikTok or Roblox or some, person on, oh my goodness, I just got one of these in the back of the room. You guys are like, please no, please no. It says 6-7 is dying, isn't it? Did you hear that? I said something and it just kept going. It wasn't like a yes or a no. That was like a whole sentence. Did you guys hear that? We've all got something to say about that one. But this is the fascinating thing about it. I think this is part of the reason that we do all of this. If we want to help dependent learners do more higher order thinking and problem solving, we have to access their brain's cognitive structures to develop culturally responsive instruction. And when I say culturally responsive instruction, all I'm saying there is connecting it to things that they're familiar with, connecting it to things that they love, because they already have a structure in their brain of how all that works. If you can make the analogy, if you can make a connection to something that they already understand and say, here's how it's like that, or here's how it's not, that's huge. And that's a big part of all of that. Okay, here we go. Now it's time to make a turn for the practical. How long did it take? 18 minutes. That's a fair trade-off, right? 18 minutes to set up, now 41 minutes of ideas. Okay, so how do we do it? Let's start with those student interests, what we were just talking about. So I don't know about you, but I love, especially at the beginning of the year, to do a student interest survey. Do you all know what I'm talking about? So this is especially helpful, I've found, when you have a class of kids coming in where you don't know them very well, and it's just a nice jump start. And you ask them all sorts of questions about, things that they're interested in, things that you need to know about them to better understand them. How many of you work in small schools and small enough school districts where whenever kids come into your class, you already probably know some things about them? Would any of you say that? That's me, by the way. I'm in a little bitty district where I have all of these students come into my class and I already pretty much know a whole bunch of them. This is a nice way to augment that, to add to it, I think. So I'll just do a Google Forms survey. I used to do it on paper. I'm not opposed to paper, but I find that whenever they give me the results, when I can look at it all in a spreadsheet, it's super helpful. And so being able to gather some of those interests, could any of you attest to the fact, would any of you agree with the fact that when you do something like this and you start to learn something about them at the beginning of the year, it helps you make connections throughout the rest of the year? Right, exactly. P.S. that little link down at the bottom, ditch.link/interest, we've written a whole post about how to do these student interest surveys, a whole bunch of example questions and what you can do with them and all of that. So if you're interested in, see what I just did there? Oh my goodness, you guys laugh at my jokes. I love you. Ditch.link/interest is where you can find that. So, and there's all sorts of questions that you can ask. I know that's tiny little print, but it is in your slides if you want to see a list. Media that they watch, school activities that they do, non-school activities, because it's not all just about the sports and the clubs, right? Family traditions, food, social media, classroom preferences. I'll ask a whole bunch of different things. I like that third one from the bottom, things they want to make sure you know about them. I have found that lots of kids will leave that blank, but the ones that don't, that's the important stuff. And so I'm always, always, always very happy to be able to see that. In fact, here's what I wanted to do real quick. This is actually a spreadsheet of student interests that I got. Let's see if this will load up real quick. Oh yeah, I did screenshots of all of this. That's right, I don't have to come out of here. Okay, so this is one that I did with my students somewhat regularly. So, I asked them all sorts of things. The text at the top is tough. Like, if I had to eat one thing for the rest of my life, it would be. Or, what do you do with your spare time? Who do you live with? What kind of music do you like? And like all of that stuff. So what's really interesting now is to take that spreadsheet, strip all of the identifying information out of it. You all know about your AI Literacy 101 on this, right? Yeah, you strip all of the information. And why do we do that? So we don't teach the model all of our kids' names and all of that, FERPA, HIPAA restricted information. So I delete all of my students' information out of it. And then I ask, here's a student interest survey about my high school students, Spanish 1. Give me a summary of what I can learn about it, then include some interesting outliers. Because that's a lot of data, isn't it? It's hard to scan through all of it and catch everything. Finally, give me suggestions on how I can use these interests to connect to the teaching of Spanish language, including analogies, topics, and other useful instructional methods. And so what does it give me? It tells me that this class is a mix of gamers, readers, and outdoorsy types. I've had them in class. I had them as freshmen for a semester, and then I've had them for fall semester this year, same kids. So for a full year now, and I can confirm that is a class of gamers, readers, and outdoorsy types. It is accurate. Snapchat and TikTok are the dominant social media platforms. Surprise! They have music preferences, country music, rap, Christian music. They love comfort food, and then career aspirations. There's a high interest in animal care and skilled trades. And the more that I've gotten to know these kids, the more that I know that that is accurate. We have a really good vet tech program at our school, and there's lots of those kids that are in my class also. And then it gives you some other stuff. I really like this one, like analogies and vocabulary connections. See, for me, teaching high school Spanish, using analogies that actually connect to things that they know about is huge. So not just even for high school Spanish, this is for like everything. But then even if I wanted to bring in some new vocabulary that relates to them, now I've got some suggestions on it. Topics and projects, instructional methods, like different things that I might want to consider trying. And then this is the great thing about once you get this spreadsheet, you don't just use it at the beginning of the year, do you? Once you get into a new unit, you can always pull that spreadsheet back up. You can follow up on it and say, hey, I'm getting ready to teach a unit about this specific thing. Do you have any new analogies for this? Do you have any new suggestions? And of course, the more that you learn about your students, you can always add new things to it. So when it comes to differentiated instruction, that's just one place. That's just one place that we can do it is, this is sort of like the student engagement lens of differentiated instruction. How do we differentiate for the unique interests of our students? And so that's just kind of one side of it. These are sort of the three pillars of differentiated instruction. If you read Carol Ann Tomlinson's work and any of the other folks that have contributed to the body of work on differentiated instruction, you'll see that it's three separate pillars: content, process, and product. You differentiate by content, which of course has to do with what the students are learning. Is there something, and whenever we have our academic standards and our curriculum, it's a great big body of information. And so if we focus a little bit more on specific things that relate to the students' lives or are cultural or developmentally appropriate for where they are in learning, that can be huge. You can differentiate for process, the way that they do their work and the way that they learn. So some of this is kind of like adaptability and accessibility settings. But some of it also has to do with, do I prefer to listen to things or read things? Do I have an audio version of it? Is there something that's a little bit more visual? Providing some options on the way that they do the process of learning, which could be consuming or showing understanding. And then there's product, the product that they create to show that learning has happened. So this is where you start to get the great big choice boards, right? And where you have all sorts of different options that you make available for students. And so having a variety of different products that fit can be helpful. So what I wanted to do for our remaining time is to dig into each of these three and give you a couple of very specific examples out of each of them. And so when it comes to differentiating for content, these are some of the things that we're talking about. Matching student interests, which we talked about earlier, using multiple formats, multiple levels of that content. And of course, we've seen lots of the AI tools come onto the scene where they're allowing you to level those texts. I'll say this, like right after ChatGPT came out, I started asking some of the teachers that were using it, like where is the biggest help for you? And there was a language teacher, I think it was like 4th, 5th grade. She did a lot of stuff with ELA, and she was saying, the fact that I can get leveled texts saves me so much time, so much time. And so, of course, what does that do? Sometimes people, I'm going to get on a tiny tangent here. Sometimes people think that using AI is going to make us less human. I don't know about you, but I think if we use it in the right ways and it frees up time for how we can use our teacher abilities and our time most effectively, it actually gives us the opportunity to be more human, if that makes sense, if you use it in the right way. Different modalities, audio, visual, streamline content or extend content, meaning we make it quicker to get through or make it longer to get through. And then, of course, offering leveled texts and bilingual text. So you got all these different possibilities. Let's get into a specific one. How many of you know about Diffit? Can I see show of hands? Okay, a bunch of you, which is great. I'd say if you're just like jumping right into a platform that you can use, especially for free, I really do like Diffit because all you do whenever you go to their site, so if we go to diffit.me, the nice thing about the platform is that you show up on the platform and it's simple. What can you create resources for? I love this button. Literally anything. Anything you can imagine. You just describe it, you give it the language, you give it the reading level. You can align it to certain standards. Okay, it looks like you can do the depth of knowledge for free anyway. And then you can generate it in pages and slides. And then whenever you've done that, the other thing that's cool too, the Diffit does that you might not realize is if you are teaching a novel, like a book, if it's in here, then it's able to go specifically down to the chapter and give you resources related to that chapter. And by the way, if you're teaching a book that's not in here, all you have to do is reach out to the nice folks at Diffit. P.S. They are here. Yeah, right? Yes, they are. They're awesome. But go to their booth and say, hey, I'm teaching this particular book. It wasn't on the list. Can you guys add it? And I bet the answer is yes. PDF files, text, YouTube. If you've got a vocabulary list, you can put it in here too. And of course, whenever you do that, this is what you get. You get a summary, you get vocabulary lists, you get questions, you get all of that stuff. And then if you want to level it, of course, it's got all of these nice customizations. They actually have some buttons up at the top where you can adjust it. So that's just a real quick one I wanted to share with you, that if you want to be able to differentiate for content, this is where you can literally create something, change the level, create it again. Change the, level it up, create it again. Level it down, create it again. Boom, 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 boom. And you're done in a matter of minutes. So I do like that. Caution. Have you noticed that if you create content for your students and you use AI to help you, that sometimes it doesn't stick to your curriculum? If you're teaching out of a textbook, it doesn't always necessarily know exactly what to teach out of your textbook. Sometimes that's nice. Sometimes it's nice to get, a little bit broader perspective, but sometimes you need to stay within the walled garden of your textbook or your curriculum, correct? Okay, so you've got a variety of tools that go in different directions with all of this. That's one of the reasons I love NotebookLM. Do you all know about NotebookLM at this point? And I see a show of hands of who knows about NotebookLM. Yeah, I knew it. Okay. It's getting out, isn't it? This, I can't tell you how often I go to NotebookLM. What's great is, of course, as a teacher, you can use this to make all sorts of stuff. And the nice thing about it, as you've probably come to know, is that it only answers questions based on the sources that you give it. Have you all noticed this? So let me tell you a little secret. This is how I like to use NotebookLM, and this is actually an example of it. I might actually pull this notebook up and show you. You get the chapter of the textbook that you're teaching out of, or whatever that resource is, and you put it in as your source. So for instance, with this one, this is teeny tiny. I'll just tell you, it says OER Anatomy and Physiology textbook. I took a chapter out of an anatomy and physiology textbook, and I put that chapter into NotebookLM to use as the source. Now with that one, since it's publicly available out on the web, all I had to do was just highlight the text, copy and paste it. And so that whole chapter is there. If you don't have, say, well, let me start this in a different direction. If you do have a PDF copy of the chapter that you're working from, you stick it in there. Now, I have not, full disclosure here, I have not examined the copyright implications of doing that. So if that makes you a little nervous or whatever, then like, don't on my behalf, okay? But if you have the ability to do that, or if you still want to give it a shot, then that's what you can do. Another thing that you can do also is if you have, like for instance, I'll use my phone and I'll use the Google Drive app, because my school is a Google school and my life is a Google life, if I'm being honest. And in the Google Drive app, if you open it up, there's a picture, a little icon of a camera. It's a scanner. And so all you do is you scan a page, and then you can add another page, add another page, add another page until you got the whole thing in there. You throw it in there, and now it's basically a walled garden into that specific chapter. So anything that it gives you is based on that chapter. And of course, what can it give you? Well, some of you have probably seen some examples of this. I'm going to pull up this. Let's go to Notebook. Some of you are already seeing this tab up in here, and they're like, oh, he's using ChatGPT to get presentation ideas. Of course he is. You are too. Just a little help, that's all. It's just a little help. Let's just normalize using ChatGPT to get a little help. Am I right? You guys with me? Okay, yeah. All right, anyway, I digress. Here it is. An anatomy and physiology textbook. And so I've created all of these different things. Of course, you probably know about the audio overview that makes the little podcast. You guys know about that? Yeah, okay. And the interactive ones are super cool too. If you haven't gotten a chance to see that, I don't know how well this will play. But
have you ever wondered, Dave, why a simple paper cut heals so fast?
You can interrupt them at any point. Have you guys seen this? I love this. Watch this.
Oh, hey, welcome. What's up?
Hey, I'm wondering, you're talking about tissues, and are we talking about like Kleenex or something else?
That is a wonderful question.
Oh, thank you.
We are definitely not talking about the kind of stuff. These are different kind of tissues.
It's the biology version.
Okay, I'm glad they cleared that up. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you for that. Okay. The other thing that I think is so, and of course, these are all the things that you can make, right? And they've got new things too. Have you seen slides? Yeah, those are pretty incredible. You can make a quiz, which the quiz is where it's just like a little interactive quiz where you try to answer, and then it gives you a little bit of feedback about the wrong answer and the right answer. So anyway, you've got all of these things that you can use to make, but here's the thing that I really like about it is that you can, we're talking about differentiated instruction, right? You can ask it, whenever you create something in that studio off to the side, most of those icons, let me see if I can pull it back up. See the pencil? With almost any one of those, you can customize it. And so if you want to have it create an audio overview, which sounds like a podcast, but you want it to explain it in terms of, remember I had gamers, right? What if it was like NBA 2K? A whole bunch of my kids play that. In fact, we just had e-learning snow days the other day, and I found out that a lot of them had the e-learning, like the live Zoom calls with their teachers going over here, and they were playing 2K. It's like, oh. But if that's what they're into, I could have it framed through the lens of that, right? In fact, this one right over here, this is a video overview, which some of you probably know that NotebookLM will do. It will take all of your content and it'll turn it into, it's almost like slides and a voiceover, right? And so I went with 8-bit retro video game theme. I'm a child of the 80s and I owned an original Nintendo Entertainment System. An original, I see you. And yes, an original NES. And so, 8-bit retro video games are my jam. And so I asked it to frame it. Remember, this is about an anatomy and physiology textbook chapter about tissues, right? So how do we explain tissues? Well, injury and repair is kind of like the boss battle. Listen.
Every good game has a boss battle, and for our tissues, that battle is injury. So how does the team handle taking damage? Let's look at a really common and
look at those graphics.
Example, tendinitis. This is an injury to a tendon, which, remember, is made of dense connective tissue. That's our support class. And if you've ever had tendinitis,
don't you love this?
It takes forever to heal. So, why is that? Well, the answer is right here. This type of tissue has a really poor blood supply.
How amazing is that? And of course, all I had to do was just provide the lens and it created that for me, right? And so if you're able to create multiple of these, now, if your school has like the free free Google for Education, you have a limit to the number of audio overviews and video overviews you can make in a day. But if you sort of like use them little by little by little, and if you have a personal Google account, you can always add in a little bit more. But you create these kind of little by little through different frames and just put them up and say, hey, do you want to learn about this through the lens of a gamer, through the lens of, outdoorsiness? What were the other thing? And I had readers too, right? So like you take any of that stuff from your student interest survey and have it create stuff for you out of NotebookLM, which is super cool. And I love the infographics too. Isn't that fun? Still sticking to the 8-bit retro video game theme, this is called Tissue Quest. And it explains the 4 different types of tissue: epithelial, connective, muscle, and nervous tissue. It gives some information about all of them and explains it in 8-bit video game style. All you have to do is just hit the little pencil and ask for those customizations based on the stuff that your students are into, right? I wanted to point this out real quick. After NotebookLM came out, I got to go to an event at Google headquarters in Mountain View, California, and I actually got to meet a couple of the folks on the NotebookLM team, and I was like, please, I'm begging you, please make this available for our kids. If possible. You don't want them to force something that's not appropriate for kids. So now they have been able to bring those access levels down to what does it say? I think it's 13 plus. Is that what you're seeing? Is that right? I knew it was down there. I just couldn't remember where it was. Yeah, there it is right there. Thank you. Yes. So anyway, this of course is a policy decision at your district, and it's all dependent upon what your school decides that it wants to do. But I wanted to let you know that it is a core service, and it is possible for, even if you've got the free version, which I think is really cool. And if you do have the free version, these are the limitations for the free version: 3 audio overviews and 3 video overviews per day, up to 3 infographics and 3 slide decks per day. Is that per person? Yes, great question. Yes, that is per person. Also, side note, I just found out I'm taking a college class to maintain my dual credit certification so I can keep teaching dual credit Spanish in high school. And I found out that because I'm a college student, you can get Google AI Pro for free for a year. I would just do a little Google search on that, Google AI for college students. So if you're like me and you have to take a college class at any point to maintain certification or something, use that for what it's worth. And then you have access to that free Google AI Pro. So anyway, that just happened to me within the last couple of weeks. I thought I'd share it. So yes.
That 3 per day
Yes.
is literally 24 hours.
24 hours.
If you do it 12:05 today, you can't do and use up your 3.
Yeah.
12:06 tomorrow is when your new 24 hours start.
That's okay. Yeah, that's a good distinction. I forgot about that. Yeah, it puts you on a clock, doesn't it? Yeah. So it's not like, yeah, I'll do one at 11:59 and I'll do more at 12:01, and they're like, no, sorry. That's a good distinction. Thank you. Okay. Are y'all still with me? You guys doing okay? Yes. Okay. All right. Excellent. 10:43. I think we're pacing this just right. All right. So now we're going to talk about differentiating for process. This is the process that students use to learn, right? And this can, of course, be sort of like your input, your taking in content, but also your ability to output and demonstrate understanding. So you got things like tiered activities, learning centers, and stations, which, by the way, I teach high school. I got to visit a kindergarten class several years ago, and I'm watching this kindergarten teacher do stations with these kindergartners, and I'm like, why don't we do this as high school teachers? Is anybody, right? Has anybody else kind of like wondered that? So I started experimenting with stations. That was like years ago, and then I didn't teach for 8 years. And I haven't done it again for a little. Maybe I need to do that again. I need to bring that back, yeah. So anyway, I think those are great. And then there's also this interest centers. It doesn't have to be different activities based on the learning content. It could be different centers based on student interests. So that's another way to do it. You've got your flexible grouping and your fluid grouping, where you have students into different groups, but then they can go in and out of different groups based on certain criteria. And then, of course, your instructional supports too, right? All of the different things that support the process, having manipulatives, graphic organizers, sentence starters, that not everybody necessarily needs, but if they have the need for it, then they can use it. And so the nice thing, of course, is that these AI tools can make sense of a lot of student learning processes, a lot of the ways that students learn best, a lot of the things that they, their preferences, the way that they like to learn, and we can adapt to that. But they can also adapt, what was I getting at with this slide? I just said that, to student interests. Oh, the processes, yeah, that's right. Okay, so the process that, never mind me, I'm just trying to interpret my own slides. The process of learning, but also to their interests and their struggles, right? So it's able to adapt, and the key word here, I think, is adapt. Since we're talking about AI, isn't that one of the incredible things that some of these AI tools are able to do? Is that they're adaptive, is that they look at the situation and they're able to be flexible and to respond like right in the moment, right? Just a second, Clay. If your school has Google, then some of your students may have access to be able to create their own personal Google Gems. You'll know about Google Gems, custom GPTs, like that kind of thing. With some of the AI platforms, students are able to make their own, or you can make them for them in tools like Magic Schools, Magic Student, Brisk Boost, School AI Spaces, that kind of stuff. The incredible thing is that if students have access to this directly, it amazes me, we were talking about that word adaptive, it amazes me how easy it is for them to get basically custom AI tutors on their own without having to depend on the teacher. What I want to show you real quick is a super quick clip from a session that I just did with Clay Smith from Google, who demonstrated how easy it is for kids to get this support, and they don't even have to necessarily get they don't have to wait on the teacher to make it happen.
You can go ahead and teach about funky and things, but instead, I want you to think about it this way. Think about it from first person. Hey, I'm struggling with math, and it's a quadratic equation.
He's the student right here.
Don't get it. I need some help. My teacher said I should put this in here and tell it what I like. So I like cars and playing games.
Sounds about right.
I like fast race cars.
But I like fast race cars. Help, question mark.
That's exactly how students go through this in here.
That is so accurate, I can't even begin. And some people, if you got taught
True.
before, would look at that and be like, no. They would, yes, they would. They would look exactly like that.
It's exactly like that.
But here, I have this prompt rewriter. So use Gemini to rewrite your prompt.
That's cool.
Act as a personalized tutor, specializing in customizing lessons based on the user's interests.
That button translated the kids' words into a prompt.
Heck yeah, like this is all built out step-by-step instructions. This is a student account.
Hang on just a second, Clay. If you don't have access, if your students don't have access to GEMS, eventually some app or some platform will probably make this possible at some point. And then B, you could always have students write out instructions kind of like this and help make it for them. But this is kind of incredible what, oh darn.
As a student, you can couldn't account.
There it is.
The quadratic formula is a super powerful tool. I'll ask Abby questions along the way to help you master it. Here it is. It's designed a standard formula written like this. In gaming physics engines or when modeling a race car's path, this formula is key.
Did you see that? In gaming physics engines and modeling a race car's path, this formula is key. And so it's connecting it right back to it. So the ability for a kid to get in, that was the thing that blew me away about this was, for them to go in and in their messy language to be able to describe it on their own is huge. So that's one example of being able to support their process. Let's look at another one. So this is one that I use in my own class personally. How many of you know about Brisk teaching at this point? Can I see show of hands? Yeah. Okay. How many of you have used their student platform called Brisk Boost? Anybody? Fewer. Okay. I love to use this, especially when I'm at a conference like this and I've got to leave sub-plans for my students. And one of the things that I really love about it, and again, this is being adaptive to where they are in the learning journey. If they're a struggling writer, if they're a writer who's really, really good, what it'll do is it creates this, you've got this document over here, and I'll use this for a reading for students to be able to read, or I'll leave it blank, and it'll be a writing activity. And then Brisk Boost can be like a writing coach and provide them feedback. And so, of course, whatever's on the screen, the little chatbot over here is able to see. And so what I love about this is I can put this reading over here, and then I can program it to ask them some comprehension questions and stuff like that. But here's the thing that I'm teaching my students that I think is super cool, is that if you don't understand something, you can just ask the chatbot. See, our kids get in such this like linear way of thinking, and they're like, I have 10 questions to answer. Answer question 1, answer question 2. Oh, I don't understand question 3. Oh, well, how am I going to be able to answer this? And I'm like, just ask the chatbot. And you can go, now it's got guardrails, so it keeps them from just, talking about, puppies or, what's for lunch at school or, whatever. But for them to be able to ask for that extra support and help in the moment and then get back to answering questions, that's adaptive, right? And so that's one of those things that sometimes kids don't think about, is that these chatbots are pretty nimble and they roll with the punches pretty well. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you, as this is a way that I'm actually using it. I'll put a reading in here, or I'll leave it blank and I'll turn it into a writing prompt so that my students can get feedback. But it's not just feedback on the assignment. They can ask it for anything that they're struggling with. Let's go to product. How are we doing on time? I got 9 minutes left. Are you guys all still awake? Are you with me? You look like you are, which is great. We talked about differentiating for product being, a lot of people think about choice boards. Writing, creating slides, creating video, creating models, all of that different stuff. Some people call them learning menus. Pick one from the appetizer, pick a main course, pick a dessert. But then it's also a way to be able to take different perspectives on the same thing. So differentiating for product could be write this from the perspective of somebody else, or using different formats. Don't write this as a 5-paragraph essay. Write this as a script for a viral TikTok video. Write this as a documentary. Write this as a marketing message for a magazine ad or something like that. Now, one of my favorite ways to be able to differentiate for product is Snorkel. And actually, hey, there's John right there. That's John from Snorkel in the purple shirt. So if you see any of this and this is interesting to you, go track John down. Do you guys have the snorkels today? I do, yep. There it is. It's right on brand with the purple snorkel. Isn't that impressive? All right, so anyway, if you see somebody with a purple snorkel, you can ask them more about this. But here's what I love about this when it comes to product, is that if you've got kids that are writers, you can have them. Let me stop for a second. Snorkel starts with either a kind of like a blank canvas, or you can put a graphic organizer in there, or a problem, or something like that. You can start them with something. But then the way that students respond is all totally up to them. If they respond by writing, there's a way to be able to put written text in. They can speak, so they're going to record what's happening on the screen, but also record with their voice. And whenever it's done, there's a transcript of what they've said. they can draw, they can take pictures. There's like all of these different ways for them to be able to respond. So really all they've got to do is just get evidence of the topic, of the question, of the prompt. They've got to get evidence in there somehow. The way that they do it is all totally up to them. Is that fairly accurate, John? Yeah. I know there's more and more that you can say. He's like sitting there going, I have so much more that I can say about this, but yeah. And then the thing that's amazing about it is that Snorkel takes all of that information, whatever text they've written on the screen, whatever they've drawn on the screen, whatever they've said out loud, whatever pictures they've taken, like any of that stuff. Am I leaving any kinds of media out that they could throw in that could be part of this?
No, that's right. They can speak, they can draw, they can write, and we capture all that to give them immediate feedback.
Yes, exactly. And so then there's the feedback right there. And so what it does is it analyzes all of that and it gives the students feedback based on, kind of like on a rubric that you provide. And then the thing that I love about it is once they've seen that feedback, you can put a little button up there that says submit again. And so they can get all of that feedback and then it's like, okay, now that I know what I need to do, first of all, that's immediate feedback, that's best practice. But then the ability to take that feedback and do something with it to improve on it, kids love that a lot of times, so then it's not as high stakes. So anyway, when it comes to that, that's, if you want that ability to let them, to differentiate for product, if the product that they're creating to show what they've learned can be any of that stuff, you put the assignment up there in Snorkel, and then you can go, you assign it out to the students, and the way that they demonstrate it, goes all the way across the board. Cool, so that's one of them. I've got a couple of other slides in here, like for instance, this is a prompt where if you want to create a variety of different products, this is basically like a prompt that'll help you create a whole bunch of choices for a choice board. You can probably come up with your own prompt for this kind of thing, but this is one that I've used before. It's in your slides. I'm just going to say that. Don't worry, I'm not going to read it off of the screen, but this is sort of a unique twist on this also. Don't worry, I'm almost done. We've got 5 minutes and I'm going to try to be done maybe like a minute or two early. Why create all of the products yourself if you can empower students to come up with products that they could make? This is where I'm thinking if we make a student-facing chatbot, we just talked about some of the platforms that offer these, right? So you've got like your Magic Schools Magic Student, Brisk Boost, School AI's Spaces, and you just set up a chatbot where the instructions are, help a student come up with a project that can demonstrate understanding of this topic. And so that's why I came up with the Creative Mission Commander. And so actually, if you want to try this, you can scan that QR code. I know we're like almost down to the end here. Don't worry, you don't have to. But if you want to see what it's like to come up with a creative project using that one, feel free to scan it. Or you can take a picture of that slide if you want to and go do it later. But it basically drops you into a chatbot where it starts asking you some questions. What kinds of stuff do you like to do? What kinds of things interest you? What are you studying? It seems sort of basic, but then it gives you a whole bunch of ideas of different things that you could try as your creative project. And so to be able to do that, gives them a lot of flexibility. And then, of course, once they've come up with an idea, you can either let them just go run with it, or they can run it past you if they want to. So. And if you want to know how in the world you create a prompt like that, let me let you in on a little secret. That's probably a secret that some of you already know. Sometimes I use AI to come up with prompts for AI. I ask my good buddy Chat, hey, I actually do this a lot. I say, I'm using Brisk Boost. It's a student chatbot program. I want to create a student chatbot where it asks my students to do these things. Can you write a comprehensive set of instructions for me? And it spits out something like this. And what I'll do is I'll copy that right out of ChatGPT. I'll throw it into Brisk Boost or Magic Student or School AI Spaces, and I'll test it. And if it does what I want, boom, we're done. If it doesn't, I just go make adjustments to the instructions, and that's it. I had a slide about that. How about that? Okay. So we've talked about differentiating for content, differentiating for process, differentiating for product. If I had had more than 1 minute left, I would have asked you what else would you add to this. I'm sure you've probably got some good stuff. But instead, I wanted to remind you of the book giveaway. Can you tell that I really, really want St. Jude to be able to give away all of these books? It's at noon in booth 265 if you want to get a free copy of my book, AI for Educators, which looks like that. Here are some other links, including a link to that AI toolkit. This is a place where all of the posts that we've written about AI in education are, and some other things there. Good enough? And I got you out of here a minute early. How about that? All right. Thank you all so much for coming.